resides here in Metairie. Their parish is the St. Clement of Rome Church, where Jerry is involved both in music ministry, men's Bible study, and also serves on the pastoral council there. They have 3 adult children, one daughter who is a nurse at University Hospital, one son who is a manager at Dickie Brennan's, and their youngest a graduate of Franciscan University who is currently teaching theology at Mount Carmel Academy. And I understand you're expecting a 3rd grandchild next month. Congratulations. So let's talk about Jerry. Jerry is a member of the New Orleans Serra Club, a pro-life volunteer. He also plays bass and serves on the board of directors for the New Orleans Civic Symphony. But probably most known by being the bass player in Bag of Donuts. So Jerry Christopher also has the honor of being, I think, the first cover band to be inducted into the Louisiana Music Hall of Fame. So Jerry Christopher.
Thank you, David. Y'all. All right, thank you guys. Good morning, gentlemen, and any ladies that may have snuck in. It's a honor, privilege to get uncomfortable and humble myself because I'm just going to maybe build upon what Sean said earlier. And I did, if Pope Francis and Father Billy can bring something to deliver their message, I guess I can too. So I got some notes, and I'm gonna. The first time I was ever asked to give a testimony was back in February 28th of 2015, and it was for the morning of spirituality during Lent, and it had topics, and the topics was musicians and music, and it was life of the spirit. How I was asked to talk how my Catholic faith guides my career as a musician, and so, you know, that was the first time I guess we couldn't find any holy musicians, so they got me, and that was the first time I talked, and I've been invited to speak and several times, but I guess I'll just get right into it. Last night, before, I guess I was cracking open my 3rd beer with my father, because my son-in-law graduated from the fire department, and we had a party, and it was like 10 a.m. I think he looked at me and said, "Are you going to be ready tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, maybe. I got some notes here." And but I limited myself to 3 because it was one for the Father, one for the Son, and one for the Holy Spirit. then when he left, I had the Amen, the Alleluia, St. Joseph. So, you know, listening to Sean, my story is almost identical. I grew up in St. Anne's, went to school here. I'm going to connect the dots to of how my faith grew over the years, and so I grew up in a Catholic home. Went to St. Anne. My father, who is here. That's another thing. When I was my dad's. I'm Jerry Christopher Jr. So if I didn't make it this morning, I was going to blame him. But my dad, he's my hero, was my hero, still is my hero. He's a full-time musician, and he worked very hard. He carried a job. If any of you older guys in here may know, ever visited the Frankie Brent Club, he played for 12 years, every night, except for Sunday, so 6 nights a week, and then during the day, he worked a day job. My mother stayed home while we were young. Me and my sister went to St. Anne. And my grandparents, same thing. My mom is awesome. Everybody, if you ever met my mom, you usually love her the first time you meet her. Grandparents, everybody, you know, family values were very important. Honesty, respect, dignity, integrity, hard work, a sense of humor, being prompt, helping others. So, as a very young child, even before school years, I can remember contemplating the idea of God and His plan for me in my life, and I just knew I was going to be a musician too. I also saw myself having a day gig doing something that required me to wear a suit, and I'm now 15 or 18 years into an independent insurance career. And I work with this gentleman over here, Greg Brown. So I was going to say, introduce good morning, gentlemen, and Greg Brown. So enter St. Anne's grade school, and when I was here, I started in trailers. We only had one building. But a common thing I've been hearing all day today so far is every hall, and they still have this in the cafeteria, a sign says, God sees me and God loves me. And I believe that. I also believed in Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy. But there was something different. Every Sunday morning, well, it's 12:15 back then. We had 12:15 Mass because my dad worked Saturday night. We would occupy that first pew right here in Mass. So I knew there was something different. I vivid memories of preparing for sacraments of reconciliation in Eucharist in second grade. I still have the image of Monsignor Duke right behind the tabernacle. That's where I had to go, and I was nervous because I was in front of everybody. I can remember it to this day, all that images. Same thing with preparing for Eucharist. And I remember even too walking down the aisle, praying to receive my first Holy Communion. Became an altar server, and then not only an altar server, but when the weddings and funerals were happening in the parish, I would get the call to be the altar server, and which was cool because we got paid. And fast forward a few years, 8th grade, of the sacrament of confirmation, and I don't even remember being confirmed. I couldn't even figure out it took me a while to recall what my confirmation name was. So, something had happened there, and I had already begun falling away from the church in grammar school. And there was a scandal here at St. Anne's Parish while I was an altar server. You may have seen the priest's name that came out in the newspaper. So after that, I kind of quit being an altar server, and that it was easy to have a good excuse to fall. Even as in 5th or 6th grade, you make these decisions. Life did not begin for me until I made accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. That's when my life began. So I'm gonna get to that point, but we got to go through this back. We got to get the backstory. Brother Martin High School freshman year. Brother Nick, my counselor, he invites me in the office. I think I'm doing something wrong. It was nothing wrong. It was just every kid had to go see the counselor. And the only thing he told me this whole meeting was, he asked me if I go to Mass. And I said, yes, I do. I go to Mass every Sunday with my parents. He said, that's great. Keep doing it. No matter what you do, go to Mass on Sunday. You're not getting anything out of it. If you're tired, if you're out of town, figure out how to get to Mass. Pretty soon you're going to be, you're going to have a job, you're going to have your own car, you're going to be out away from your parents. And he was right. But I didn't listen to his advice. So, sophomore year, I got my own car. I started working in fast food to pay for the insurance. And, I had to work on Saturdays and Sundays so I could sneak out and didn't go to church anymore. Junior year at Brother Martin, this is 1988, and I'll bring this up because people like to hear about the band because that's kind of a cool thing. And my music career kind of started at Brother Martin in 1988. We convinced the faculty to have a battle of the bands. And I did it, I love playing music, I enjoy it all. But the main thing I wanted to do was impress my girlfriend at the time and have a gig. So we had to create a gig. There was no one hiring 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids. So we created an event. And interesting, a lot of the bands that you may have heard of, like the Chiwis, the Bag of Donuts, obviously, the Bucktown All-Stars, Molly Ringwalds, categories, all of us, some nucleus of that band was together. We were all kind of friends growing up there. Fast forward now, I'm in college, and the band's growing. We're playing 200 shows a year. were selling out all kind of college venues, proof that God has a sense of humor, because we were terrible. I mean, and reward you, but so we're rolling, and what I say my spirituality at this point consisted of, every now and then I might say an occasional prayer, because we would drive through the wee hours of the night from one town to the next, just asking for protection. You know, I found myself doing that. Whenever I got back safely to the next town, I rarely even said thank you, Lord, for getting us safe. But that's where I was at that time. You know, young 20s. Well, they say that the road is no place to start a family. You ever heard that lyric in a Journey song? But that's exactly what I did in 1992. And I showed up in front of Father Bob Massett. I had a loop earring in my ear, and I had hair down to the middle of my back. And said I wanted to get married. And he looked at us and like, you got to be kidding. But he said we should go to Pre-Cana. We didn't do any of this stuff. I think for spite, I didn't go to Pre-Cana, because anyway, he ended up doing my Arden Altman, so there does have a good story. There is a good ending to all this, but I didn't see the reason to do all that preparing, because I wasn't even going to church on Sunday. I wasn't even going to church on Christmas and Easter. We weren't making Mass. Enter my brother-in-law. So my youngest sister, she gets married, and my brother-in-law is a you know, Bible-only, evangelical, loves the Lord, has reverence from the word, for the word, good guy, great guy, and you know, I knew he had something that I didn't have. He had a relationship with Jesus, and he had all this enthusiasm. So, you know, I say the sinner's prayer with him, and that was really my ticket. I was too immature just to at that time to think that I'm going to just say this prayer and that's it. But so far, I mean, I can give you the short version of what my story is. I was a good boy. Here's where I become a bad boy. And then I go to confession and I'm a good boy again. So here goes. I'm at, you know, we're on the road for 4 years, about 6 years now. I'm on the road, 6 years. Being a good boy, avoiding all the pitfalls that comes with the rock and roll business, you know, of drugs and one-night stands. And 6-night spring break show in Panama City in 1995. I've done this trip probably 10 times prior to this time going it, but I'm already a father now. I have a not even a year-old baby girl at the point. So at this point, this was the first time I you know the story. I dabbled a little bit, a lifestyle of sex, drugs, and rock and roll for the next decade as a result of that. My spirituality at this point probably is, God, where are you? Still no real career at this time. I'm just playing music, but I have a daughter to raise, and her mother and I, you know, we agree to raise her Catholic and by the book. She enters St. Mark's Grammar School in St. Bernard Parish in 1999, and I remember instructing her that the only grade I'm interested in is her religion grade. Now, this is very hypocritical of where I'm at, but I was raised Catholic. I do appreciate and value the Catholic education I received, because in the back of my mind, or somewhere in my heart, I knew I was given the wisdom to protect her. And you know, I had a spiritual game plan of my own, continue doing what I want, and then hopefully on my deathbed be able to call for a priest for confession and slide right in. Not a good philosophy, because I was a scout, and what's the scout's motto? Always be prepared. So again, once again, my spirit was slightly awakened after having this encounter with my daughter and instructed her, and so I found myself mainly just to visit her. On Tuesdays, they would bring the kids to school. The kids to Mass, right when they were like in kindergarten. So I found myself going every Tuesday to her school Mass. And I remember, wow, I'm getting something out of these Masses. They were totally at my level. The kids' masses are the best. I mean, it was like the priest showed you how to go to mass and what you do when you walk through the door. And I mean, it was like all this stuff that I may have learned and just forgot. I was kind of putting it in practice. So I'm starting to make this movement. And my dad, he's been telling me, you need to get an annulment. You need to go in this annulment process. And so that was, what, where am I at now, 1999? So fast forward to 2004, I finally go, okay, I'm going to go to this annulment process. And I began it, and somewhere in the middle of going through that process, I decided to go to confession again. It was right around, right before Katrina. And I walked to St. Patrick's. It was probably my first confession since they brought us when we were in 8th grade to prepare for confirmation. And it was half-hearted. It wasn't really a great one, but it was good enough. I got welcomed back into the church, because that's just a welcome back. And I started going to Mass on Sunday and started becoming, the minimalistic Catholic. But I started getting the Bible studies, opening up Bibles. I did the Great Adventure Bible study. And of course, Katrina happened. We can all talk about Katrina stories and how that affected our spirituality. But this is really the meat right here. After it was somewhere after Gleason blocked the punt and the Saints lost to the Bears. I was going through the annulment process, and we were pretty much done. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, all these lies, it wasn't bad at all, it wasn't expensive, my kid's not a bastard, it was like all these lies. And we know that Jesus is the truth. So, I'm in the confession, I'm in the annulment process, I'm leaving, and I said, you know what, let me go back to confession. I got a priest right here, everything that we could possibly talk about, I wrote down and we talked about and all this. So it wasn't like it was going to be a brand new confession, but for me it was the first one that it was a wholehearted confession, and because there was nothing new I could say. And I remember hearing during the words of absolution, it was like right then and there, this metanoia, the hand of God came in, changed my heart, and I knew I had encountered the truth, and I had encountered Christ, and I had to respond. I just remember thinking, wow, all this time, everything I learned from St. Anne and Brother Martin, and Brother Nick, go to Mass, all this is all true. The Eucharist, the Bible, the Blessed Mother, all the teachings, it just hit me all at once. And I knew this is the big thing. I knew there was nothing I could do or ever do to earn God's love or make him love me anymore. And it's like I knew that any sin I committed or could commit would make him love me any less. And I left in gratitude. I thanked everybody on the way out of the Chancellery's office. I was like on fire, and my life really started to change. But since I had this metanoia, I thought too I had to quit the band, because I'm looking around and I thought I could be doing the devil's work with the band. And a buddy of mine, a very good friend of mine, said, you know what, wait a year before you do anything that drastic. Some of the places you go into, you're going to be the only church that people get. So it's funny, it's always a discerning process. But a few months after that, and I left the Chancellery's office after that confession, and I said, Lord, I'm going to trust you. I went right to Capital One Bank, opened up a charitable gift account. I started immediately tithing, and then the next day, the very next morning, I found myself at 6:30 Mass here, and then the next day after that, and now it was, 12 years later, I found myself every morning coming to Mass. Even when I'm out of town, I'm using the Mass app to find out where it is. Life has changed. But it was always, after you have that honeymoon, some of those whammies kind of come back in temptation. So said, you know what, went back to confession. I said, this is going to take a lot. And I started with a weekly confession for about 6 months with a priest friend from St. Clement. And it was funny hearing Sean talk about, going to confessions. Like, felt like at the beginning I was coming there with saying the same thing, and it was Father Robert Cooper. He goes, Jerry, at least you're not committing any new sins. So look at so you're not doing anything new. And then eventually the confession changed, the frequency, and all those whammies, that disappeared. And then I felt this urge to use my musical gift to play at Mass. And they had a life team Mass at St. Clement. It was at 6 o'clock, drums and everything. I'm like, after going at Mass for maybe 6 months, I felt inspired to serve and to play. And it was like 3 weeks going, and I had this urge, never called the parish. And on the third Sunday, they made an announcement that they were actually looking for a bass player. And ever since then, I've been playing music ministry, even started a group here. And then I became involved in a men's Bible study group. And a lot of those guys are here. I saw Dan Edmond and Todd Hours, and Greg Brown used to be in that group. So we meet every Tuesday morning. We go through the Bible readings, the scripture readings for Sunday Mass. And having other men to journey with and fellowship with is also part of my spiritual game plan. So it was that moment, that confession in 2006 where I say my life began. Before then, some of it was a blur, but when I go back and look, and when I reflect back at how I share my story, it was all about connecting the sacraments. It was, Jesus is the truth. The closer we are to the truth, the more we walk in His will. And the more we walk in His will, the happier we're going to be. And I noticed things that changed with my family. My relationships were stronger. My businesses were started thriving. All since putting Jesus and hearing Sean talk about focus. That's where I put my focus in. If you ask where God is in my life, interesting thing, I just became associated with spiritual direction. So this is a new thing for me. This was something that Deacon Carlo at St. Clement, because I was invited to check out the diaconate program by our pastor, and I discerned out of it pretty much real quickly because my wife wasn't too open to it, and I didn't think I could give up music, so it was a quick discernment. But Deacon Carlo said, you should get a spiritual director at that time, and he suggested getting an older priest, someone older than me, and someone I didn't know too well, because I know a lot of priests. And so this past February, I was asked to talk to the deacons that were going to be ordained, all the deacons, actually transitional. Dr. Tom Neal invited me to talk to his class. And at the end of class, one of the guys asked if I had spiritual direction. So here's the thing. With Deacon Carl, that was like maybe 5 years ago. He suggested that. It took me 5 years to do this. My dad told me for 7 years about the annulment, and we just sit there, you hear it, you hear it, you hear it, you hear it, and you resist it, and then you start doing these things, and it's just like, wow, you just keep growing and growing and growing. So, where's God in my life too with the band right now? I'll share something with you. One of the things with the spiritual direction is we don't do this as a band. We don't pray before gigs because not everybody's equally yoked in that department. But it was suggested, and to my astonishment, everybody's like on board with this prayer before gigs. And also, who doesn't like that? The devil. And things are not going real well after we just got inducted in the Louisiana Music Hall of Fame. But everybody is committed to growing and keeping this prayer in. And I'm like, wow, so here we go again. So here's the next the next challenge. And anyway, when my daughter ended up choosing Franciscan to go to college, that was not something I pushed down on her. You know, I raised her much like my folks raised me, and they brought me to places, even as a little kid, that most people would go like, what is a kid doing in this place right here? But that made us, you know, we don't live in a bubble, we're in the world, and focusing on the Lord has just changed my life. I'm happy to share my story. Anytime I'm asked to, I will do it, and every time I'm asked to, I know it's uncomfortable. It's humbling, but I thank you guys for listening. I hope that you got something out of it that you can bring to your families, to you personally, and you just grow in love and service with Jesus, and stay close to the truth. For me, it's the sacraments. There's nothing better than being a Catholic, and the Eucharist is the summit of it. It finally all made sense after trying to resist it for so many years. So I thank you guys for listening. I hope I didn't go too long, and you know, enjoy the rest of the morning.